somewhere along the way, I got labeled Wonder Woman. And I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's that, 4-year-old little girl in the center right there that thought combining her Wonder Woman underoos with her Cinderella mask for like trick-or-treating, 1983 probably, was a great idea. But don't get me wrong, I've leaned into it pretty hard. We've built a Wonder Woman Wednesday on social media campaign that was actually the brainchild of my business partner, Colleen. I've dressed like her. If some of you guys were here from Benefits Pro a couple of years ago, Nancy Giacalone and I dressed like her for our 20th anniversary for our Fast and Furious session. I built content, community, and honestly a bit of a brand around her. And from the outside, it can look like a highlight reel, like she's got it all together. Like she's doing it all and she's doing it well. But here's the truth that nobody tells you. Most women don't feel like Wonder Woman while they're becoming her. Because the evolution of a Wonder Woman, it doesn't look like strength, it looks like doubt. It looks like saying yes when you should have said no. It looks like carrying things that were never yours to carry and convincing yourself that you're fine. I'm fine, everything's fine. All while you're doing it. Because here's what I've learned. The world loves to give out the title of Wonder Woman because that's easy. But what it really means most of the time is that everybody depends on you, that you're the one that just figures it out, and you're the one that doesn't drop the ball even when you're juggling 10 of them. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking yourself one really important question. Is this mine to carry? Because here's the part we don't talk about enough. Carrying everything, it has a pretty big cost. It shows up in your time, it shows up in your energy, it shows up in your relationships, and sometimes it shows up in the quiet moments when you've realized that you've built a life that looks really good on paper and doesn't really feel the way you thought it would. So about 12 years ago, I started writing for Benefits Pro. And I do want to take a second to recognize everybody from the ALM, now ARC team, for giving so much of a platform, including this one today for me. So many of us have had the spotlight shined on us that never would have happened if it wasn't for you all. And I'm deeply grateful. So 12 years ago when I started writing for Paul, I would always ask him the same thing. I'd send him an email and say, what do you want to hear? And sometimes he would task me with writing something motivational, talking about the ACA, talking about sales and prospecting tools and techniques. And I still remember this specific conversation like it was yesterday. And I don't know if I got Paul on a weak moment, but he said, Susan, there's so much negativity going on in our industry right now. And I just want to hear something good. And that was it. That's when there was a light bulb that went over my head. Now, about 9.5 years later, the idea turned into something very specific. Because back then I realized I had access to something really powerful. I had just come off my year as serving as national president for Women in Insurance and Financial Services. And I knew I had all these incredible women that I had access to in our industry. Women doing amazing things, building, leading, showing up, not always getting the spotlight, but doing incredible things. So I did what any good salesperson would do, and I pitched Paul. And what started out as an article called What's the Good News, Ladies, and has now morphed into the Wonder Woman series a couple years ago, it turned into something so much bigger. Over 300 women have now been featured in our industry. Over 300 stories of leadership, resilience, and impact. Women building businesses, women leading teams, women raising families while carrying careers that don't exactly clock out at 5 p.m. And here's what's wild. At the time, I don't know if I realized I was rediscovering my purpose. I just knew I was onto something. But if I'm to be really honest with you, at that phase of my life, I was still proving. I was proving I belonged in the room. I was proving that I could build something like a business in New York City after growing up in a town of 1,000 people. I was proving I could lead an industry that didn't always expect me to. And proving is powerful, but it's also freaking exhausting. Because no matter how much you achieve, it never actually feels like it's enough. And then everything changed for me. In 2018, my father passed away. I kind of lost my North Star and my compass, and I definitely lost my biggest cheerleader and supporter. And the day after my dad passed, I went to the gym because that's what all Wonder Women do, right? We show up, we push through, we keep going. And on the way back, I heard this clanging sound. And something inside me said, look up. So I did. And there it was, this picture that you see here on the screen. The flag at the post office in my hometown of King City, Missouri, at half-mast, lowered for my father. And I just stood there, because in that moment, it wasn't about titles, because my dad had them. It wasn't about successes. He had those too. You can Google him. He's got a 4-page Wikipedia page. It wasn't about really anything he had built. It was about a life lived in service to other people. In the days and the weeks that followed, the stories people shared, the impact he had made, the people he had touched, forced me to look at things a little differently and ask different questions. And I knew in that moment when I saw the flag at half-mast, I hope to live a life that when I'm no longer here, that people regard me in the same light. But when I was reassessing things, I changed from what's bigger, what's more, what's next, and shifted into what actually matters. And more importantly, am I building a life that reflects that? And to be honest, that question can be uncomfortable. Because doing more, we know how to do that. Working harder, taking on more, saying yes again, we're really good at that. But doing good, that requires something different. That requires you to slow down. And I'm not so good at that. It requires you to get honest and to say no to things that look good on paper, but don't actually mean a thing to you. And that question, that changed everything for me. That turned into supporting the University of Missouri School of Law Veterans Clinic with a campaign we lovingly called at the time Pancakes for Roger. Then it turned into a scholarship for veterans that wanted to go to law school like my dad. Then a book, then a keynote, and then finally 2.5 years ago almost, a nonprofit called Pancakes for Roger. And during that evolution, since the whole concept was created, we've helped 3 veterans fulfill their dream of going to law school. We've helped veterans recover over $21 million in back pay from the VA through our support through the Mizzou Veterans Clinic. We've attended countless military funerals where there was nobody to show up for them. And we've helped a terminally ill child of a veteran family get a swimming pool through our partnership with other organizations. And less than 6 months ago, we provided 9 housing support and improvement grants for veterans across the country. And thanks to many of the people in this room, we're on pace to double those number of grants this year. And here's what's interesting. After my father died, after that shift of really starting to live in my purpose, a woman that had been featured in the article series reached out and said, we should start a mastermind. I'm going to be honest with you. My first immediate reaction was, nope. Because for a long time, this was the first time I wasn't trying to prove anything to anybody. I wasn't trying to do everything anymore. I was protecting my time, my energy, and my purpose. And many of you in this room that have gone through a significant loss in your life, you understand that a loss can recalibrate things like nothing else. But then again, I stayed open. And then I emailed 175 women who had been featured and said, if we did this and we started a mastermind, would you be interested? And 76 of them said yes, and 5 of them raised their hands to help lead. And that's how the Wonder Woman Mastermind was born. And in the last 3 years, it's been exactly what it sounds like. A Zoom room full of Wonder Women, not trying to prove anything, but choosing to support, grow, and show up for women in completely different ways. And what's been fascinating to watch is what happens when you put a group of high-performing women in a room and take away the need to compete with no titles, no posturing, no trying to prove who's the smartest person in the room, just real conversations about what's working and what's not, and what actually matters. It turns out when you remove the pressure to prove, people show up entirely differently. In this group, it's a lifeline. It's the women you text at 10 p.m. during fourth quarter and say, I'm about to burn it all down and go buy an ice cream truck. And then on your phone, you see the bubble show up in the ... And you get the response back, let's fucking go. These are the women who have walked through loss with each other, celebrated wins, and built real relationships in an industry that can sometimes feel pretty transactional. And here's the thing. When you're rediscovering your purpose and your life starts to align with it, you don't feel less busy. You feel more clear. You don't feel less challenged. You feel more certain. And that alignment doesn't mean that things get easier. It just means that things get more clearer. And you start making decisions faster, and you stop second guessing yourself, and you stop saying yes out of obligation, and you start saying yes because it actually matters to you. And that shift, that changes everything. And so for the shift in me right now, I'm working on my next book. It's called Wonder Women, The Untold Stories of Female Veterans. And what's incredible is 4 out of the 12 women featured in this book are from our industry. So you see that 4-year-old little girl that was in her Wonder Woman underoos and Cinderella mask, she had no idea what was coming. And I think a lot of us grew up that way. Because, we were 80s kids. We were latchkey kids. We let ourselves in. We made questionable snacks, and we just figured it the fuck out. And we were told we can do anything because Barbie told us we could, and our parents weren't around to tell us we couldn't. And growing up with a military father that was also a judge and had 2 older brothers, I was never taught to stay in my lane. So when people call me Wonder Woman, I smile. Because now I understand it was never about doing it all. It was about evolving. A Wonder Woman isn't someone who has it all. She's the one who learns what actually matters and has the courage to build her life around it. And the best part, you don't choose to become her all at once. You choose her when it's inconvenient. You choose her when it's uncomfortable and when no one's watching. And when the world is telling you to do more, but your gut is telling you to do something that actually matters. And the longer you do that, and the less you care about titles, and the more you care about impact, you choose her, and you choose you over and over again.